Welcome to episode number 333 of Goulet Q&A. For those of you that like multiples, I was going to say even numbers, but it's not an even number. Whatever. If you like having three at the same number, hey, here you go. 333. Anyway, fountain pens are still a thing around here. And I'm Brian Goulet here from Goulet Pens. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking about cleaning ink off of your fingers, adding stuff to your ink to make it flow better, eyedropper converting a Sailor 1911, and if that's a good idea. Flex nibs that can fit a Kaweco Sport. If the fins on your fountain pen feed affect how quickly it dries out. And I'm going to be spotlighting our latest Retro 51 sweater pen, Festive Fawns. And I'll be showing you all the old ones we've done too. It'll be fun. Let's start off with some feedback then. All right, got some good feedback. Last time I asked you all about opinions about an audio podcast, and I got some really good feedback on that. Audio podcast, specifically of Q&A here. Travis Manley says, overthinking it, which is what I thought I was doing. Start with a new episode on January 1st, and don't worry about it. Most encoders now allow you to extract audio live as you're making it. Although I'm not sure of your workflow, I listen to your audio-only podcast. Listen to audio-only podcast of shows all the time. Okay, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, extracting the audio out would not be the hardest part. I don't know that we'd be able to do it like live as I'm recording it, because we would still need to kind of edit it down, and sometimes I have to cut stuff out and whatever. We would need to do it after we edit it. I mostly record this all in one. Well, I do record this all in one session, but sometimes I, forget something and I need to get up and I'm up for 2 minutes and got to cut that out. And, I might make bodily noises and things like that that are unsavory. So, cut those things out. Anyway, well, I appreciate that feedback. Kenny Larson also has feedback. I'll respond to the podcast question with my marketing and public relations hat on. I'm on lunch break, so I'm still in that mode. All right, Kenny. I love your stuff and really miss having you show up in my podcast feed. I always looked forward to every episode of the Pencast and didn't miss a single one. Your podcast was vital to the start of my fountain pen journey, and I am one of the definitive podcasts for the hobby. Since the end of the Pencast, I admit I've only managed to catch 40 to 50% of these. Whereas with the podcast, it was easy for me to listen to because you were always there in my podcast feed and I got an alert each time. Now the YouTube videos are the only way that I can catch this information. It's much harder to come and listen. Well, I can appreciate that. Podcast form was seamless, and having the information on YouTube only increases the friction to get the information, especially because whether or not you show up in my feed to let me know that you've posted a video, any of your videos, is a bit of a crapshoot because of the almighty YouTube algorithm. Yeah, it's that way on every social platform. There basically is even if you're subscribed, it's like you have to go to, like in mobile and YouTube, you have to go to the subscriptions tab, and then you have a better chance of seeing it. But it's kind of crazy. Can't do much about that. And then as far as whether or not to load the back catalog, I don't know that it's necessary. You could add boilerplate to the bottom of your episode notes with a link to the YouTube playlist where all these episodes are. That's a good idea. I think the more important issue here is that there's a subset of people or customers that are not getting your content as often as they could because you're not in a space that you used to play in. These are people that will find fountain pen content in podcast form regardless. Your brand just won't be in that space. Well, I think that is very true. And it's a little extra work, but it's not nearly as much work as producing the thing in the first place. So I think I'm going to look into that and look to set that up soon. I don't know that I'll have it set up by the time I publish this episode. So I can't say yet, but I'm going to work on this because now I've gotten enough feedback where people are like, yeah, we would really like that. And essentially that's all I was looking for from the beginning, was basically enough people asking to make it worth the time and the effort. So I appreciate the feedback. And then I got, I think, one more. This is a quick one though. Ann Wagner says, so much of your videos is importantly visual. I wouldn't be interested in just audio. Your video content's just great. Well, that's awesome, Ann. That is obviously what I'm entirely focusing on right now because I'm not doing the audio version. But if I did, it wouldn't take away from the video at all. It would just literally be another option for somebody to listen to. So I try to record things in such a way that you can listen to it in audio and it somewhat makes sense, even though sometimes I am showing things visually. But yeah, so great feedback, everybody. I appreciate that. And then to get away from the podcast thing. Marianne Hummel says, I like the idea of adding a What's in Brian's Office segment. What do I want to see? Books. I always want to see what's on someone's bookshelf. And please spotlight the new line of Tom Hesson Charles pens. Well, we'll get to Tom Hesson in a second because we have spotlighted that. And yeah, I think I'm going to add a segment for a while because I've got all this cool stuff in the background of my office. And yeah, I'm going to do that. So I'll add that to the end, sort of where I have like my adventures and stuff like that, because if it's not necessarily going to be pen related. So more on the personal side of things. So I'll tack that on and look to add that for a while. I don't know if it's a segment I'll be able to do forever because at some point I'm going to be talking about things that are not that important or relevant. But I'll at least keep it up for a while it's interesting. So yeah, great ideas, everybody. And then the books too. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely go on and on about some books, but some of those I haven't read in a while. So I may not even remember most of what's in there. But anyway, let's talk about some new stuff. All right, we got a new pen from Delta. This is a nicer, higher-end gold nib pen. The Oro di Amalfi fountain pen is a limited edition. This is going to be $876 for this pen. And 14-karat nib, extra fine, and medium. Writes great. Nibs are made by Jowo, so they're going to be good stuff. Their Jowo, the gold nib, Jowo number 6 nibs are pretty phenomenal. And then filling mechanism, we got a standard international cartridge converter. And it's got a threaded converter that comes with it, which is always nice, especially with this pen. It's a little bit bigger. Grip is a little bit more hardy. So having that threaded converter is nice. So it's only gonna be 68 pieces of this. I think the material is kind of limited. I know the orange is like a celluloid that they have on there. And then the non-orange part, that's not celluloid. That is gonna be a resin, but I'm not totally sure what that resin is. It looks really interesting. I haven't quite seen it before. But yeah, it's like a C-toned. Not quite sure. But anyway, it's made in Naples, Italy, just like all the other Deltas. So yeah, if you're interested in that, they look pretty cool. They look pretty cool in person, I will say. And then we've got another couple of Delta pens. These are going to be more on the affordable side. Steel nib pens. Maybe the most affordable that we have. I'm not sure. I might have to check on that. But anyway, we have the Signs of Time. So there's 2 pens in the Signs of Time. These are going to be special editions. So they've got a whole collection of Signs of Time, and these are the next 2. So one is called Medieval Art, which is pretty cool. It's like a red and green, kind of nice for like a holiday theme. These are going to be Jowo number 6 steel nibs on these ones. Fine, medium, 1.1 stub, and a fine flex as well. So that's kind of cool. And then these are cartridge converters as well. And that's cool. And then the other one, the other Signs of Time, is called Renaissance. So this one's cool. It's like a gray and gold, and it's kind of got some translucent parts too. Some of it's kind of opaque, but other parts are translucent. So it's got a really interesting kind of depth to the material, which is kind of neat. So yeah, this one, same nib setup and everything, $148 for these pens. So not too bad for what they are. And these pens, they're still really well made. Cast resins, they're not injection mold and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool to get these pens like this for this price. And then Tom Hesson. So Tom Hesson, we launched this, we kind of quiet launched this last week. At the tail end there, I have a video that I've been working on for that. So we have those 4 pens. These are all coming from the UK. And they have 4 pens: the Revolution, the Edinburgh, the Rebel, and the Charles. The Charles being like the flagship one, kind of the higher end one with some really cool looking resins on the Charles. So these are all going to be steel nibs, and there are some pretty cool ones. So the most options you have is for the Charles, which is number 6 nib. These nibs are all made by Jowo, which is kind of cool, in Germany. They have an extra fine flex in the Charles, and then an extra fine, and medium. And then you've got extra fine, and medium, no flex on the other 3 pens. But anyway, we got nice pictures of them. We've got them up on our website, and they're definitely more on the affordable range. The Charles is the most expensive at $165, but it's really on par with like an Edison or a Franklin Christoph, somewhere in that range. But then the other ones, you're talking like in the $50, $60 range, and they write really nicely. So those are definitely worth a look, including some wood pens, which are really cool. So yeah, go check those out. And let me know what you think. Leave some comments and stuff. And then got another one, a Monteverde Innova. This is another special edition. This is going to be an exclusive of ours. our next exclusive, because we got a bunch of these Innovas already. So it's a like fiberglass resin. So they're, kind of looks like a carbon fiber weave, but it's not carbon fiber because that's only black. But it's a fiberglass fiber weave, whatever it is, but you know what I mean. You can just look at it visually and see what I'm talking about, but looks really cool. This one I think is probably my favorite because it is blue and it is a bright, vibrant blue. It looks just awesome. I mean, we had samples of it. I'd seen it multiple times. And then when we got the pen in, I had to inspect it and I looked at it again. I was like, oh man, this pen is awesome. Just like every time I don't see it for a while and then I see it again, I'm like, oh, I love this color. It's so great. So anyway, number 6 nibs made by Yovo on that one. They're going to be extra fine, medium, broad, and 1.1 stub nib, as well as an OmniFlex. So lots of nib options on that one. $52 for this pen. So trying to get some more affordable ones in here where we can. And then moving completely away from affordable, we're going to the Sailor King of Pens Naginata Togi Ebonite called Umisaki. This is a limited edition. This Ebonite's really cool looking. I've never seen an Ebonite quite like this one. Looks really cool. Almost looks like a maki. It almost looks like some kind of urushi, but it's Ebonite, so it's like a hard rubber. Very cool looking. It's got a 21 karat King of Pen size nib on here. Looks awesome. And two-tone nib, which also looks great. It comes in medium fine, medium, and broad. And this Naginata Togi nib, so it's like a really thin line when you hold it up, and then when you write further down, it gets to be a thicker line. So it's really kind of cool. I've got a video on the Naginata Togi nib on the black pen, which is like the standard one that's available. This is the limited edition. So the pen body itself is going to be the limited edition part, but the nib is going to be the same as what's on the regular Naginata Togi. So pretty cool. 500 pieces on this one is going to be $1,900. So it's more of a collectible kind of a thing, but it's going to write pretty nice and yeah, all that kind of stuff. So pretty cool. And then last thing I have, this is actually going to be the spotlight for today, our Retro 51 sweater pen. So this is going to be a roller ball, and it's called Festive Fawns. Very cool, kind of fitting in with the like 8-bit look that we like to do on all of the other sweater pens that we have done before. And yeah, we have a whole bunch of them now. I think it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's pretty cool. We have those, and I will show you all of them. So we're going to be doing a one-shot deal on these ones. That's our pen for this year, and once they're gone, they're gone. So we'll have them for the holidays. Obviously, that's why we're coming out with it now. And yeah, you can pick it up for $74. Goulet exclusive. All right, that's it for new stuff for right now. There's going to be more stuff coming out because we're coming into the busiest time of year when all the manufacturers like to come out with stuff as everybody gets into the holiday spirit, AKA buying gifts. So yeah, kind of neat. So we'll have lots of new stuff coming out. So you can add it to your Santa Claus naughty or nice list. Well, wait a minute. The naughty or nice list is whether the kids are naughty or nice. It's your Christmas list, your Santa, whatever it is, your wish list. Anywho, let's talk about some company updates, and then we'll get into the questions. All right, we had Fountain Pen Day last week. Hope you all had a good time celebrating that, writing with some pens, just giving them some love. We had some deals that we had over the weekend, and lots of y'all took advantage of it, so I'm glad. We came into, pretty busy week this week. Team's been working hard trying to catch up, and that's been great. So hopefully everybody gets everything in time. Things being what they are with shipping and whatnot, especially after the plane crash and just all these crazy things. There's a lot going on. So it'll be an interesting holiday season to see what happens with, just retail and shipping in general. But anyway, that was kind of cool. So not the plane crash and all that kind of stuff, but just Fountain Pen Day and everything that was going on was kind of cool. So hope y'all enjoyed that. That's what I got to update company-wise. Nothing else too crazy going on right now. And yeah, let's get into the questions for the week. All right, question number 1. This is from Mackenzie Danielle. Says, do you have any tips for getting ink off of fingers? LOL. I'm constantly stained with various bright colors that often won't abate for a week or more. Wow, I don't know if I remember having an ink that I couldn't get off my hands for a week. That's kind of crazy, but I don't use every ink out there. And I wonder if what I wonder is like, do inks, sorry, what am I trying to say? Do inks affect people's hands equally? Like, are some inks going to stay on some people's hands longer than others? I don't know how you would even know that or test for that, but whatever. I guess you could like scientifically test that. Just have a bunch of people dip their fingers in the same ink and see how long it lasts. But then you'd have to control for all the factors, like which soap they use and how often they wash their hands and all that. I don't know. It would be a kind of a pointless scientific endeavor, but this is what you get when I turn on the camera and I just think out loud for an hour and a half. Okay. Anyway, that is a long time for me. My ink on my fingers, which happens all the time, I feel like doesn't stay on for more than like a day. Maybe I'm just not paying attention enough, or maybe I'm just whatever, so used to it that I don't even bother like clocking it anymore. But anyway, so hand soap, obviously is like going to be your go-to. That's the most accessible thing. I feel like hand soap will help. Certainly, like when I get ink on my fingers, I will wash it just with whatever soap that I have immediately, just because like whatever ink is actively on the surface of my fingers, I don't want to like smear it on other things. So I'll quickly try and just wash off whatever I can. And usually for me, that's enough and I just move on. But not everybody's in that situation where you can just walk around with inky fingers all day at your workplace and people are totally fine with it because, I work at a pen company and that's very normal here. Let's see here. Some other things, hand sanitizer is usually pretty handy. In a pinch, that can sometimes help. Just whatever the alcohol and stuff that's in the hand sanitizer can sometimes have a different impact on certain dyes, certain inks, than just hand soap does. So, you can try to use one or both or try them together. It's definitely the kind of thing that like it does depend on the color, depends on the dyes, as to what will actually help to get it off. So anyway, those are the two most handy things you usually have. So obviously you're usually going to start with those. The next thing I would say is like a pumice type soap. So if you think about the stuff that like auto mechanics use, the like Gojo orange or the fast orange, or we've used this stuff called like Zep cherry bomb, which is pretty interesting. So it's the stuff that's got like little pumice in it. So it's kind of gritty. Also smells good. It's a little more of an industrial kind of cleaner. That stuff generally works pretty well for us. Usually if I want to get the ink totally off my fingers using that stuff, if I work at it for a little bit, especially with the pumice, that will pretty much take care of most everything. The only thing that really causes me problems is if I get it like really everywhere and I get ink like in the crevices of my fingernail, that can be hard to get out no matter what soap I'm using. But that stuff's good and it's not, you got the abrasive aspect, but it's not too harsh. And then it's not like real harsh chemicals in those things. And you can pretty much find that stuff anywhere. You can get it at like home centers, you can get it at auto shops, usually like, I don't know if they sell that kind of stuff in grocery stores, but you can certainly get it at a lot of, pretty readily accessible areas. This is another thing I've heard some people use in a pinch, mostly for like Noodler's Bay State Blue and stuff that's like kind of weird. Just different types of inks, but dandruff shampoo, actually. Some people use that to get that off. I don't know what that necessarily has anything to do with anything, but some people have noticed that works. Probably because if they've had it on their fingers and then they like are washing their hair, they notice that it like gets it off or something. But I know some people will just like straight up use shampoo as like hand soap for certain inks. So that's something you could test out if you have some handy already. And then there's a couple of products that are kind of made specifically for ink on your fingers. We carry one from Private Reserve. So it's called the Ink Zero Luxury Professional Hand Ink Remover, which sounds like, an Amazon listing that's keyword stuffed, but it's, the stuff works pretty well though. It's not the cheapest stuff in the world. For a 4-ounce tub, it's $23, 8 ounces for $39, but they worked with like a cosmetics company to design this thing. So it's like really, really good for your skin. It smells pretty nice too, but it is a bit pricey. So that stuff, if you wanted to use that maybe a little more sparingly, and if you really like care about your fingers and stuff like that, maybe it's worth it to you. But we carry it and because it does work actually really well. But it is just on the pricier side. And then I know Colorverse also makes one. We got a sample of it. We didn't end up carrying it because, it was like $25 for like a small kind of tub of it. So we wanted to see like, do people really want it, basically. And if people are really asking for it. I don't know that we've had a ton of demand for it. So it's certainly something we could carry more regularly, but I know it exists and it's around, but that stuff works pretty decent as well. And then something else that I heard, this is more for getting ink out of like fabrics and stuff like that. But you know, you can certainly use it on your hands as well. It's called Amodex. I believe you can get it at like art stores and I think even grocery stores and stuff like that. It's pretty common cleaning thing. But yeah, that can also work as well. So got a few different options for you. There's probably like more industrial type stuff that you could use, but I haven't tried any of these things and they don't like necessarily come up as often. If you all have any tips about other things that you can use to get the ink off your fingers, you know, please comment and then we can all benefit from that. But those are the ones that I've, you know, used and had some pretty good experiences with. So hopefully that helps you out. Otherwise, just, you know, don't worry about it and just have ink on your fingers all the time. That's my solution. Anywho, okay, next question. WZYEO. Wizio, 1990. Hi, Brian. I really enjoy watching your Q&A episodes and always look forward to your new videos. Well, thank you very much. Here's a question regarding using ink additives. I like my fountain pens, mainly TWSBI Ecos, Pilot 78Gs, and Explorers. Writing smooth and wet, so I normally add 1 tiny drop of dish soap and 1 drop of glycerin to a typical Diamine 30 ml bottle to improve flow and lubrication. There was once I made the ink too wet. One time I made the ink too wet, so I added some tap water to make the ink drier, which sounds crazy because you're like, how are you adding water to make it drier? But compared to, you know, the other additives, it is drier. Do you think it's normal to fine tune the wetness for each ink bottle like this? Just trying to get a consistent, smooth writing experience for all my pen and ink combinations. Thanks. I know that some people do this. Do I think it's normal? You know, normal sounds like such a judgmental word. I will say it's probably not that common that most pen people are putting additives in their ink to fine tune the experience. I think most people, it kind of falls in a range. Some people may have a slight preference for one type of ink over another and one type of pen. You know, the paper too is also a factor. There's lots of different factors. But I don't think that most people are probably altering their ink too much, just because, you know, it gets kind of complicated and experimental as well. So I'll get into that just a little bit. You've actually got more experience with this than I do because I have never, this is probably something I actually should try because I do get asked about it from time to time, but I've never added anything to my inks to get it to flow differently. I've watered it down before. I guess that could technically be considered an additive, you know, just like with distilled water, but I've never tried adding like a glycerin or anything like that. So, I mean, of course, you're free to do whatever the heck you want. Once you buy it, it's your ink and you can literally do whatever you want with it. But it's all going to be at your own risk, right? So this is something, you know, I haven't messed around with myself too much, but I've heard of other people use it. I did a little research after getting this question. I found some Reddit threads. I found some Fountain Pen Network posts, and I know enough about it to sort of sort it a bit out in my own head. But again, I haven't experimented with it all too much. And what I will say is that, you know, adding any additive to an ink is going to introduce a potential risk for contamination. Contamination not only of whatever ingredients are in the stuff, but then some of these additives are things that bacteria and mold are more likely to enjoy. So, you know, most fountain pen inks have biocides in them to combat these things. You know, you're going to have some degree of a surfactant or like a binding agent or something like that. You're going to have these things. You know, most fountain pen ink, you're dealing with like water. You know, you've got your dyes. You might have some gum arabic or some other kind of like thickening agent. You're going to have some lubricants in there. surfactants, to help it. And then there's usually like some degree of salt and biocides. So there's like a bunch of ingredients that all kind of end up being in there. And exactly how much is going to vary a lot. And it's mostly going to vary because of the dyes, because whatever the dyes are and the different properties, you need all these different like tweaks and formulations to get the stuff to flow properly and dry properly and all this kind of stuff. So there's a bit of chemistry involved in figuring all this out. But anytime that you're adding additional stuff to it, you are changing the ratios of these things with each other. So even if you're messing with it, it's not like you can just say like, oh yes, this many drops per bottle of what, is going to be your standard thing that you always do, because it's going to really depend, like literally one ink color to the next, even within the same brand, just because the dyes that are used can vary quite a lot, and their properties as well. So, what I was reading from those that have experimented with more bacteria, like glycerol and gum arabic in particular. So if you're adding either of those, gum arabic is something that's usually used more in the calligraphy world. That's something I think you use it's like a thickening sort of agent, like a binding agent. So I don't think that's something that most people are adding to their fountain pen ink, though I guess you could always experiment with it if you're curious. So yes, that's why most ink makers use biocides, is because when you add these things in there, they, it's like food for the bacteria. But if you're only adding a tiny bit, like 1 drop per bottle, I don't know that you're going to be throwing off the ratio that much. It was interesting because as I was reading what different people are mixing, it is confusing because it's kind of all over the place. Some people are adding like 2 drops per converter fill that they're doing, which is a way higher ratio than you're talking like 1 drop of glycerin per 30 ml bottle of diamine. Other people, they'll do like 1 or 2 drops in an ink sample size, like maybe 2 mils. Like maybe I've heard like the 1 drop per milliliter of ink for like a glycerol type thing. But, again, this is really going to depend on a lot of different factors. So you're in full on experimental territory in this case. I don't know that there's like a reliable enough experience that people get when doing this type of stuff to where it's commonly known and understood that you can just do this one thing and it will make your stuff all flow great and feel better. For some people, they add this stuff and they say it doesn't really make that much of a difference. Other people say they do it and it's too much, or that, there's other things, specifically like what I was reading about the dish soap, which, dish soap is a surfactant. Like that's going to be like a lubricating thing. But what I read, a lot of people's experience was that it doesn't, it does make it sort of flow out, but it's mostly like it soaks into the paper and kind of spreads and feathers more. It doesn't really make it feel any wetter as you're writing with it. So, again, it's like chemically there's different things happening. The glycerol, I think, actually is a thickening agent, is what I read. I don't understand the chemistry behind it, but I think it's like more of a thickening agent for the ink, but somehow it makes it feel wetter. I don't know. I don't really understand what's happening with all that. The dish soap thing makes sense to me because, it's I've used dish soap a lot more. I haven't used glycerol very much in my life that I'm aware of. Maybe I have, and it's in stuff and I don't even know. But I don't know. It's an area that I've not experimented with a lot, and you're very much in like kind of not uncharted territory, but certainly lesser charted territory when we're talking about mixing in some of these agents. So again, I tried to wrap my head around it a little bit. I read mixed things online, different people trying different things, different ratios, having very different results. And, some people saying, yeah, they do like how it works. Other people being like, I couldn't really tell much of a difference, or there was this trade-off because it affected this other thing, but the main thing that I heard from a lot of people is, especially if you're trying to figure out what the right ratios and stuff is don't experiment on the full bottle of ink. Because again, if you do too much, then it's hard to undo it. So, if you've had good experiences with it, by all means, it sounds like what you're doing maybe more than I do. And then, good luck with that. But That's what I would say is like, try doing it in smaller amounts first to really dial it in. The only challenge then is if you're mixing in smaller amounts, the ratio and stuff like that might be a little tougher to get, especially if you're talking about like a couple of drops of this stuff per 30 ml bottle. Or if you're only mixing like 2 mils of it, how would you even get that ratio accurate in a smaller amount? I don't know. So if any of y'all have experience with this, please make note in the comments. I think it's an interesting topic, or if you're curious to try it yourself, if you have, say you have an ink color that you're like, I don't care about this color, or it's old, or it's, you know, something that I never use, and it's basically just rotting on the shelf. Not rotting, but you know what I mean. You'd be like, what the heck? What do I have to lose? Let me just go ahead. Or you have some old samples or something, and you're like, yeah, I don't like this color. Let me just try changing the flow, just experiment, see what happens. I believe you can get glycerin at most grocery stores, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe gum arabic too, but certainly you can get some of this stuff probably at like arts and craft stores, and maybe some home centers as well. So you could try any of these things. So in dish soap, you can obviously get that pretty much anywhere. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I'm interested in it, but then I never actually go and experiment with it. Probably because it terrifies me a little bit. And then if I was to try to do any of this stuff and then show you all, and then you had mixed experiences, I'd be like, I feel terrible. Anyway, so instead I'll just talk about it and not really know what I'm talking about. How about that? Oh my gosh. Okay. Anyway, that's what I got for that one. Let's move on to things that I know a little bit more about. How about that? All right, Lisa Ann Art has a question. Says, can you eyedropper convert the Sailor 1911? Great costume, by the way. That was my Halloween costume. This is not a costume. This is my actual outfit. Okay, so I have a Sailor 1911 right here, and I grabbed the clear one because I think it will help to more easily demonstrate what it is that I'm going to be talking about. So there's a couple different factors. The long and short of my answer, can you eyedropper convert a Sailor 1911? The short answer is technically yes, you can. At least in the ones that I've messed with, they're sealed up enough where it's not going to leak ink all over the place, or it shouldn't. Now, is it a good idea to eyedropper convert it and use it long term is a different story. Mainly because it's got a metal threading on the grip section here. Anytime you have metal that's not specifically something that is corrosion resistant, then you're sort of playing with, fire. Now this is gold plated. Gold is corrosion resistant, so it might be okay, but that's assuming that the plating is great and even and solid all the way around and it doesn't get scratched or anything like that. But whatever's underneath, it's probably brass. I'm not 100% sure, but whatever the metal is underneath is probably not corrosion resistant. Over time, the salts and the, some of the other things, I think it's mostly the salts, but whatever is in the ink can corrode with contact with metal over time. Obviously not gold, not stainless steel, because those are what nibs are made of. Titanium too would be fine. But basically any metal that's not those, any type of like chrome or brass or copper or anything like that, it's not going to be ideal with prolonged contact with ink. So that alone is reason enough to where I would not do it long term, because you don't want to corrode that. But another reason more specific to this pen has to do with this back part here, the finial, right? So on another pen, actually, let me grab a non-clear one. Nope, just kidding. I moved it and I don't want to get up. So you're going to see the clear one. So on a non-clear one, you would just see the body color and then you'd see the trim ring and then you see the finial here. And you'd be like, oh yeah, the trim ring's just on there, whatever. Well, what this is showing as a demonstrator here, this is actually threads right here. So when they do trim rings like this, oftentimes they will have to actually cut and thread two separate pieces. So this is actually, you've got the body as one piece, and then your finial is a separate piece with threading that threads into the body. So whenever you have a trim ring or anything like this that is on a pen, just know that you're dealing with multiple parts of a pen. Why is this an issue? Well, if you're eyedropper converting it, ink is mostly water, and water is going to take the path of least resistance. So if you have any threading in here that is not completely sealed up, the water is going to want to work its way out of there. And what can happen if the threads here are not totally tight, or, I believe they've glued this. Looking at it, it looks like there's glue on these threads. Well, if there's any break in the glue that is not totally sealing that up, then the ink can work its way out of the threads over time, and then you're going to end up getting ink that's kind of coming out around this trim ring. Now, is it guaranteed to happen? No. And it might be fine, but it might not be fine. And you really wouldn't know until it starts to happen. I mean, if you have the clear one, you might be able to see the color in there, but honestly, it's going to be kind of tough to see if it's working its way in the threads, especially if there's ink kind of behind it. So you really wouldn't know until you start to get ink coming out of the thing, and then you're going to have a mess on your hands. If it's really tight like that, like these threads are really, really fine, you might be okay. And you're probably thinking like, why don't they seal it up all the way? Well, it's not meant to be eyedropper converted. They don't advertise it as that. So they're putting glue on it to keep the finial from coming off. That's what the glue is there for. They're not worried about totally sealing it up, though that may be a consequence. But either way, you've got your metal section here, which is not the best for prolonged ink contact. And you've got the finial thing going on, so it's like, yeah, you technically could, but it's probably wise if you don't. You got your converter here. You can always refill a cartridge, and that will just have to be good enough. So if you are ever curious and want to just kind of maybe test and see if the body of your pen is, sort of sealed, you can just give it like a blow pressure test. Just like, give it a good hearty push of air. Doesn't guarantee that you're going to be okay in terms of its water tightness. But certainly if you have a pen that's in question, if you're not sure it's totally sealed up, if you blow on it really hard like that, and you're getting all back pressure and you don't hear any noise and you don't feel any pressure give, then it's at least pretty sealed up. So this one would probably be okay. At least in the short term, if I were to eyedropper convert it, but you still got the metal problem. So anyway, this is not uncommon with a lot of pens. I think pretty much all of Sailor's pens have these metal sections. So at least I can't recall one that doesn't. So none of them are really eyedropper convertible. So sorry, but that's how you know whether you can do it or not. Got a question from Ed Harrington here. Says, I'm an illustrator and I always I always keep 2 Kaweco Sports on me so I can sketch anywhere and anytime. That's right. You never know when you're going to be sketching. So one has the 1.1 millimeter stub nib. The other has the fine nib. Between the two, I have all my bases covered. Almost. I do miss the line variation I could get with traditional dip pens. Are you aware of any aftermarket flex nibs that will fit the Kaweco Sport model? Well, I wanted to show you because the answer is no. I'm not aware of any aftermarket flex nibs that will fit it. It's because the nib on the Sport is small. It's smaller than a number 5 Yovo. So the only spare flex nibs that I even have is the Omniflex nib that fits Conklin and Monteverde. We have the Yovo ones, like the ones that are the Goulet nibs, and Noodler's nibs, which are like a number 6 size. Well, they're all number 6 size. So they're all the bigger nibs, way bigger than what's on the Kaweco Sport here. Even if you try to like pinch it and mash it and get it in there, it's going to be too big. The curvature is not going to be right. It's just physically not going to fit inside the pen. And honestly, it's so much longer that even if it did, I'd be concerned about it like scratching the inside of the cap here. So I'm not aware, maybe y'all know something that I don't, but I'm not aware of any spare flex nib that comes in a size that would fit a Kaweco Sport. And even dip nibs. Sometimes people modify dip nibs and fit them into their fountain pens. They don't often work amazing, but sometimes they're somewhat doable. But those are going to be so long. I don't think that anything is really going to work well in such a small pen like this. The feed's really short. The curvature and stuff is going to be really small because it's such a small grip pen. So unfortunately, I do not have any solution for you. But mostly I just wanted to show you the difference in these nibs here that, yeah, it's really not going to work at all. So I don't have a great answer for you. The answer is basically no, I know nothing. But that's what I've got. Maybe, again, in the comments. If y'all have any other experience, let me know. But I think you're doing a great job covering as many bases as you can with these pens. But that's probably the best you're going to be able to do with the Sport. Okay, final question for this week is from Tybe89. I've realized that the pens that have feeds with fins dry out sooner than those feeds without fins. My Pilot Custom 743 in a fine nib and my Pilot Custom 74 in a soft fine dry out faster than my Pilot Falcon soft fine, my Pilot E95S, and my Pilot Metropolitan medium. Is it just me, or do you have the same experience? If this is the case, what exactly is the use of fins on feeds? It's a great question. A lot of people ask because feed design does vary a lot from pen to pen, even within the same brand. A lot of times, pens will use, kind of share across them, like Lamy has a bunch of different, pens with the same feeds. But Pilot has a big range of them, and you've got all Pilots here that you mentioned. So let's see, your first one that you mentioned was what? The Custom 743. So I've got a 743 here. Pilot with most of their feeds tend to be somewhat similar. The nib size can change depending on the pen model. So some of their feed sizes will go up as well. But the basic design is the same, where you do have these kind of exposed fins on the feed. With Pilots, though, they don't go all the way up to the end. In fact, Pilot's feeds are pretty cool. You can see there's like this kind of swoopy part here that doesn't have the fins on it. And it's got this kind of hole, or this little whatever divot in the middle there. That's actually your filler hole. So when you're filling your pen, you don't actually have to dip it all the way up to the grip section. As long as you get that filler hole under there, you can fill it. So that is pretty cool on most of your Pilot gold nib pens, at least. Metropolitan doesn't have that, but I'll show you the other ones. I don't think the Falcon has that one either, but the other ones are good. So I know you have that on the Pilot custom pens. So we have that. So, but you still have these exposed fins, right? So there's that one. So that's your 743. So we can sort of clock that one. You have a custom 74, which is going to have a similar looking design, though it is smaller. So you can see there the feed design looks similar, but it's a different size, right? Because you got a different size nib. So you got your number 15 nib on the 743, you got your number 5 nib on here. So similar design, but it's got some fins, some exposed fins on that one. And then you mentioned what your Pilot Falcon, right? So here's a Falcon. So this one, your filler hole's all the way up here, no exposed fins, right? So that's part of what you're like asking about. Here's your E95S. This one is really kind of different because it's got an inlaid nib. This is unique to this pen. And then it's just got this teeny little exposed portion of the feed. Your filler hole's right there, so still very low on the thing. But no exposed fins on your E95S. And the other one you mentioned was the Pilot Metropolitan. So this one, it's got these grooves on it, but it's not going across like you typically would have with feed fins. These are just indentations. It's aesthetic. You do not have exposed fins on your Metropolitan. So if I was having the experience that you're having, I would ask the same question and be like, well, obviously the exposed fins are making a difference. And there may be something to that. When it comes to nibs drying out, certainly how much it is exposed to air makes pretty much all the difference. Now, you're wondering, like, this is one brand. Why do they have so many different designs? Well, some of it is scientific. There's like engineering that goes into these feeds that are more complicated than I understand. But a lot of it's aesthetic too, and there's some different trade-off. I mean, I would say a lot of it's aesthetic, but there's going to be some trade-offs, right? So when you have nibs that have no exposed fins, typically, I will say, unless they're designed in some special way, and I don't know well enough to explain what that way might be, but typically the benefit that you would have to having these exposed fins is it's going to be able to catch up quicker. If you're writing really fast or you're writing a lot of ink down, it's going to be better at keeping up with that ink flow. The fins essentially sort of act like a reservoir. And so when it gets really, when you really get going, it can hold a lot of ink in there, and then it'll be like right there at the nib, so that it's not purely depending on that one little feed channel that's coming down from the ink reservoir up in the pen to try and keep it flowing the whole time. Particularly on this one, like this is a Pilot FA nib. It's a little flexy, and it can have ink like ready more on demand right at that point. Now the Falcon, I will say, does a pretty good job, and it does not have these fins, but if you're going to be, it's a soft nib, it's not a flex. If you're going to be pressing down a bit on your soft Falcon nib to get a little bit of line variation, it will do okay, but it will not do okay if you do it a bunch really fast, because it can only keep up but so much. So, that is generally one benefit to having the exposed fins is it generally has like somewhat of water flow, and it allows you to kind of catch up and have more ink ready on demand. Not necessarily always the case. There's different factors involved, and there's kind of too many factors to say that like this one thing is going to make or break any given pen in terms of the experience that you're talking about. One thing I will say though, you look at it and you're like, oh, okay, well, it has no fins. Well, all fountain pen feeds have fins, because they all need some kind of reserve reservoir. So I'm looking at the Metropolitan here. I just pulled the feed out, and look at all those fins. They're all there. They're just inside the grip of the pen. And basically I'm not going to go pulling all of these out, and some of them don't really come out. Like the E95S is like, it's like glued in there. Like it's not easy to get it out. But I have a couple other pens too here. Like this is a Pelikan M1000. This has a very large nib, like a number 8 size nib. And look at the fins on this thing. It's crazy fins, right? Look at how deep they are. Look at how many there are, how far up it goes on the grip. Not on the grip, on the nib. This thing has fins for days. And then, just because I wanted to show this massive, crazy nib. This is the Magna Carta M1000. This is the largest, certainly the largest steel nib I know of. Largest nib I can think of in general of a production pen made today. Look how massive that thing is. Well, look at the feed on this thing. I mean, it's bonkers, and it's got fins all over the place here. So yeah. Every pen's designed differently. Gosh, that's such a huge pen. Look how ridiculous that thing is. These are not pens that are known for like super, well, I don't know about not a lot of people have the Mag 1000, and I honestly haven't written with it daily for a while to know how well it dries out. But the Pelikans are not known for drying out like crazy. They tend to seal pretty well. And other pens like, TWSBI is one that I use all the time. Most of their pens are going to have, fins that are pretty well exposed. This is a TWSBI Eco. It's got fins, more like the Pilots. And this thing seals up great. So it's really hard to say. I think a lot of it has to do with if you're talking about the pen being capped, a lot of it is going to have to do with how well just the pen itself seals up. I don't know that the feed, I think if it's probably a factor, but if you have a cap that doesn't seal up quite as well and the pen is going to be prone to like being able to dry out anyway, I don't know that the feed design is going to change that too drastically. I think mostly what the feed design is going to afford you is the ability to leave the pen uncapped and still have it write fairly reliably with that exposure to air with it uncapped. I think when you cap it, you're talking more about the tightness of the cap and all that, and how much it's able to, not breathe while it's capped. That's probably a bigger factor, but yeah. So I would say don't totally hang your hat on it. I would say if this one factor for you is the most important thing in your pen buying purchase, then yeah, maybe start with the ones that don't have the exposed fins, narrow it down from there. It doesn't hurt anything necessarily. But what I will say is that it's really going to come down to the individual pen in terms of how much it may or may not dry out. So whatever, before you make your final commitment on a given pen, read lots of individual reviews, and that's going to be the best way. If people say this pen's great, it never dries out, and you see that it has exposed fins, I wouldn't worry about that too much. I wouldn't stress about it. So there you go. That's at least my thoughts on it. I could be wrong. Maybe I just haven't been paying as much attention to the pens I've been using, but in my experience, it has not been like a night and day, oh my gosh, I notice every pen that I use one way or the other is a totally different experience. My experience is so varied that the exposed fin thing is honestly not too much of a determining factor for me, at least in my experience. So that's what I got on that one. Let's go ahead and do the pen spotlight, shall we? All right, it's that time of year. We've been doing this for a number of years. We skipped last year, but we're back on it now. Festive Fawns is our pen in question. Not in question, in feature. Our pen in answer is what it is. Oh my gosh. So these are cool. Retro 51. We've done fountain pens. We've done mostly rollerballs recently, honestly. But this is a custom packaging, custom pen. This is a retail exclusive. Retro 51 does a ton of retail exclusives with all kinds of people. But the sweater theme has been a thing that we've had going on for a while now, since 2018. So it started out with the first one, Montana. So they had done this one in a rollerball, and we had the opportunity to do it in, fountain pen form. So that's pretty cool. So we didn't design this one. This was Retro 51 before we had picked up the brand, but they gave us the opportunity to do it because they noticed that we wore Christmas sweaters and things like that. So they thought it was neat and fit the brand, so they offered it to us. Well, the following year, in 2019, is when we did the one that we really made our own, Santa Jaws. This was inspired by a ugly sweater that I actually ended up purchasing, made contact with the creator of the design of the sweater, got their permission, and then came up with Santa Jaws, which is a shark with a hat and sweater, like a holiday sweater pen, or on wearing this, whatever. What am I trying to say? The words. A shark wearing the Christmas sweater. That's what I'm trying to say. And then we put some little Easter eggs in here and stuff like that, and it was kind of fun. So still went with a kind of pixelated, sweatery looking thing. So that was fun. And then the following year, in 2020, we did Abominable Sweater. So, Richard, who's been working at Retro for decades, plural, really loves Sasquatch. So we tried to work in the mythical creature kind of thing. So yeah, we got a Yeti on here. We got the narwhal in there. And then we put our little shark in there. So sometimes we'll weave little things throughout here. So that was fun. We did that one. And then the following year in 2021, we did Warm Hugs. So that was fun. So we did the Warm Hugs. I like Warm Hugs, from Frozen, Olaf. So we did not rip off Olaf, but it may or may not have been slightly inspired. Went with a darker green theme on this one, and the snowman was wearing, again, a shark sweater pen. It's kind of fun. Yeah, so there's that one. And then after that, we did Santa Jaws in rollerball form. That was in 2022. 2023, we did Cozy Penguins. This was cool because I don't know I know we had never done this blue trim before. I don't know if Retro had done it either. It was kind of a new thing, but either way, kind of fit and it was fun. So we did penguins wearing sweaters. And then we got some polar bears up here too. I don't think we weaved in a lot of Easter eggs on this one. I think it was just a cool theme. So we had that one, and then we skipped last year, and now we're back with Festive Fawns. So kind of fitting in with the whole thing. These are fawns, like reindeer fawns. Technically, I believe that they are called calves, not fawns, but that's okay. It's kind of commonly called both, but yeah. So we went with, this time, fawns wearing sweaters. So I think that like animals or creatures wearing sweaters has become kind of a recurring theme for this, at least since Santa Jaws. So yeah, we have that. And then, just general Christmas themes. I don't think we weaved in too many extra little bits on here, but we do have, the little reindeer face on the top. And then we got reindeer all around. The one little Easter egg thing that we do have in here is we did put a red nose on one of them. We were like, we should have a Rudolph in there. That'd be kind of fun. But they're just cute little like fawns, like yay, running around. So yeah, and then it's just, this trim is really cool though. This is like metallic, kind of like mint green trim. That is right. Look at this. I got ink all on my fingers. If only I knew how to get the ink off my fingers. Yeah, so that's it. Really, it's just cool sweater theme with, little baby reindeer on it that we thought was really cute. So that's what we got now. It comes packaged in here. This one is the artist proof, so it says proof on it up here. But on the non-artist proof ones, it will have a number. We're doing 500 of these, and once they are gone, they are gone. So that should be nice and fun. So we'll have those. I imagine they're not going to sell out like day of or anything. So you got a little bit of time, but definitely don't wait around too long. I can't imagine that we'll have it too long. So that's it. It's fun. Glad to be doing this again. And get it now while you can. We'll have it on our site. All right, I've been really boring and not up to much, so I'm going to skip over Brian's adventures because I honestly don't have many adventures to talk about. And I'm going to do the new segment that was suggested that's going to be called, What's That Back There? So basically, I'm just going to look at stuff from the background, and I'm going to pull it up, and I'm going to talk about it and show you what's going on and talk about its relevance, because there's thoughtfulness behind not absolutely everything back here. Some of it is just, it's like a design thing and it kind of looks okay. But most everything back there is there for a reason. So I'm just going to grab something for the next however many Q&As until it gets boring, and then I'll change it up. So last week I talked about my Lego Emmett mech back there. And this week I'm going to pull something you probably can't even see most of the time because my body is blocking it. As Rachel says, I make a better door than a window. But it is this wooden object here. And if you're wondering why I have a wooden handsaw, there is a story behind it. So I made this wooden handsaw. It was modeled after an actual handsaw. The general shape of the handle was one that I had. So it's actually pretty ergonomic. The saw itself, this is walnut right here, which grows a lot here. And then this is a maple. Just a little bit of figure to it. So nice figured maple with a little bit of spalting there, which is kind of cool. And yeah, I did this up. So the story behind this, if you notice, it says, the best dad I ever saw. If you can see that text there. And then on the back, it says, love Ellie. That's my daughter. And yes, that is a heart that she has signed over her thing. And she wrote her name in cursive. Yes, the story behind this is Ellie, how old was she? I want to say she was like 7 or 8, pretty young. But she came and she asked me if I could make her a wood handsaw. And I was like, what do you mean? Like I needed to like understand what it was. Rachel was able to help get me to understand what it was she was actually asking for. I was like, oh, it's for like a decoration kind of thing. But she just kind of like was being kind of coy and asked me to make it. And I was like, is this something you're going to keep? Is it like a gift? Is it for like one of your teachers or a friend or something like that? And she was being a little bit evasive, and she was like, yeah, it's for a gift. I was able to kind of eventually pull out like, yes, it's a gift. And I was like, oh, okay. So you want it to like look kind of nice. I didn't know if it was for like a school project or something, and she just needed, whatever. She was not very hyper specific, again, probably because she was very young. So I was like, okay, let me put like some effort into it. So I was like, I made it kind of nice, and I sanded and finished it and stuff like that. Because I was like, well, if it's going to be a gift, then, at least you want it decent. But I was like, I'm not going to spend like hours and hours on this thing. I don't remember how much time I spent on it. I spent maybe 2 hours total, right? So then I gave it to her, and I was like, here you go. And she's like, thanks. And then just like disappeared. Well, then I'm trying to remember what holiday it was even for. It might have been for Father's Day or my birthday. I don't think it was Christmas, because I feel like it was a holiday that was not one that I was like super paying attention to. I want to say it's probably Father's Day in that case. But either way, she writes on it and then gives it back to me. And she's like, here you go. Here's your gift. And I was like, first off, I love dad jokes. So the pun, I definitely love. And it's just adorable. But the fact that I was like, not totally understanding what it was that she needed it for, and then I ended up making the thing, and then she gave it back to me like 2 days later. And I was like, okay, then I sort of just made my own gift, but it was thoughtful. So anyway, I do talk about that a little bit, and it's kind of funny, but my daughter is very, very good at, she's very persuasive, and she's a hard worker and very industrious, like one of the hardest workers I know, but she's also really good at getting other people to like get on board with her ideas as well. I joke that she's going to like, stage a coup and take over this company one day. Which she'd probably run it better than me. But anyway, no, it's adorable and it's precious. And now my daughter's going to be 14 soon. And man, my kids are growing up fast. So I don't know. It's just cool. One of those cool things that I like to do, even though I mostly made it myself, the fact that we have a story with it and it makes me think of her a lot. Yeah, I just keep it back there. And I love woodworking and I love saws. So it just kind of checks every box. But yeah, that's what that's doing back there. The gift I made myself without realizing it. Anyway, that's what I got for this week. We'll go ahead and wrap up. And then I do have some fun facts about reindeers. So stick on for a second. Just want to thank you for watching. Keep leaving me feedback in the comments. Ask me more questions, because that's kind of how this whole thing works. It is called Q&A after all. And then, be sure to subscribe, even though it doesn't matter. Like, comment, share. The more engagement you have, the better. Yeah. And then I'll work on that podcast thing. So we'll see about that. Where the engagement truly doesn't matter. But anyway, make sure you check out gouletpens.com for your fountain pen, ink, and paper needs. And let's talk about reindeers, right? So reindeer facts. So first off, reindeer and caribou are the same animal. They're both Rangifer tarandus, and they are, that's their scientific name or whatever. In the wild, they're called reindeer in Eurasia, and in North America, they're called caribou in the wild, but reindeer in captivity. But they're all the same animal, so it's the same thing. Now, reindeer calves or fawns can typically stand within an hour of being born, which is pretty cool. And they can follow their mothers within 5 to 7 hours after birth, which is wild. So they pretty much have to be ready to go from the get, because they're kind of nomadic and they travel in packs and there's lots of predators. So they got to be pretty nimble right off the bat. And then within 1 day, these reindeer calves are able to run faster than humans. Isn't that crazy? So yeah, the mothers tend to sync up their calving, giving birth around the same time as other mothers, usually in the spring, when the plants are most abundant, and more plants means they can eat better, which means they can provide better milk. That's sort of how it all works. And then both male and female reindeer grow antlers, which is unusual in the deer species. And they have the largest and heaviest antlers among all the deer species. So there you go. There's your fun reindeer facts. That's all I got for you this week. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I'll catch you next week, and right on.